Yes.
Hello and welcome to Easter Eggs here on Hyper RPG. I'm your host, Scott Shuken. Today we're talking about community management. To my left we have Becky Taylor. She's done marketing community management for Enkidu Games, 3D Realms, Tencent Boston, and Signal Studios. She can be found at Twitter at OMG Laser Kittens. Hi Becky.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Welcome. Thanks for coming on. Across from me here is Josh Stein. He's done marketing and community management for Xbox support and the Xbox MVP program. Right now, he's working for Quantum Leap, which we're all very excited
Quantum
for.
Break.
I'm sorry?
Quantum Break.
Quantum Break, excuse
Quantum
me.
Leap, awesome show.
Quantum Leap is
like,
also
I
cool.
was like, oh my god, Quantum Leap's coming back.
Quantum
Why
Leap
didn't you
is
tell
coming
me?
back.
Why
He's
didn't
coming
you
back,
tell me?
but Quantum Break is also coming, which
Yes.
is even more exciting. He can be found at Twitter at Steinikin, K-I-N at the end. And next to me here is Mike Robles, who's done community management for communities such as Dungeons & Dragons, Magic the Gathering, Minecraft, and Killer Instinct. These days, he's at Lone Shark Games. He can be found at Twitter at the Mike Robles.
That's right, Scott Bakula hype. That's right, Scott Bakula hype. we are now all about Quantum Leap.
Yes,
that is what's
This
happening.
has become the Quantum Leap show.
I get,
We're
a lot
not
of,
talking
I get a
about
lot of memes and GIFs where people bend the genres of Quantum Leap and Quantum Break, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm
a
sure
lot of photoshopping. It's great what the community comes
So
up
you're not
with.
sick of it yet?
No, I love it.
Good.
It's 'cause
I love Quantum Leap. It's an
Leap is
amazing
great,
show.
that's why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quantum
All
Leap
right.
is fantastic.
Let's talk about the topic of the day, community management. You're all community managers.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because you're not like running groups of people and stuff. What is your role? To anybody who doesn't know what a community manager
Herding
is,
cats.
Yes,
Yeah.
on the internet.
Yeah, you heard cats on the internet.
to
Yeah.
do what?
Basically, kind of from my standpoint, yeah, you heard cats a lot from the internet, but it's basically, for me at least, it's getting the community rallied around a central point. It's getting them around, whether it's a game, whether it's a process, whether it's an idea. Sometimes it could be charities, but it's your job to basically rally them behind those kind of efforts and make sure you show off the goodness that the community does.
I feel like community is a really good stepping stone between marketing PR and the public. It's like marketing PR is like here's what we want to say, and then community managers are like, all right, here's what we're gonna say to make our audience understand.
Yeah, I found community managers they're pretty much the liaison between the development team or publisher and the community,
Yeah.
the people, the gamers. And so like it's really important that the community manager listens to the fans and really gets their point across
Yeah.
along with, marketing and PR's points.
Yeah, it's important to point out that you sit on a seat of tables inside those dev, those marketing, those PR interviews, and it's your
Yeah.
job to be that voice of that community.
Yeah, I was gonna say it also goes the other way around. Where the community is like, this is what we want to say,
Yep.
and the community is
Yes.
like, here's this like 4 rules that I want, and we're like, all right, 2 of these rules are actually really good. I'm gonna take those to the devs and be like, hey, the community wants this, but I think this is what they actually mean. And the devs like, well, maybe we can or can't do that, and it's definitely a 2-way street for that.
Translator almost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
absolutely.
How do you balance that street, right? You are in a sense then between, right? You're between these developers who want you to get the community engaged. You're between the community who wants to get the developers to pay attention to them. How do you toe that line?
I think like the word translate that he just used is really key there because
Yeah.
you get players sometimes who are like, I hate everything and I hate you. And you have to like work to really figure out like, okay, what do you hate?
Right.
Like, what are you actually
Right,
complaining
yeah.
about? And you really have to work with them to translate that and get that then back to the developers. Along with the developers sometimes, like, there's been a lot of instances where developers say something on Twitter and it doesn't come out right.
Oh my
And you have
goodness.
to kind of work and
Stories, the
translate
stories.
it into a better way for the community to understand. Because, if you're not used to being in marketing PR community, you might not know how to word that.
Well,
so
there's
that,
a
like-
language that they speak.
Exactly.
Becky, they're asking that you get closer to the mic because you cannot be heard.
Geez, sorry.
Becky, so here's the thing: is Becky and I are good friends, so she's not going to mind me saying this. Becky's loud in nature, so I think she's like sitting
Well,
back.
usually I have
because
to.
Becky's always, whenever she's on panels, she always has to like sit really far back because man, it can Becky be loud.
Yes.
And I say this
I
as a
talk
friend.
very, very loudly. Usually.
So going back to Becky's point, I think another one of the biggest things I think that has to do with community management is making developers understand that the vocal audience doesn't represent the majority audience. Because there are those people that may be like, I hate everything about this game that I love playing,
Right.
and here's why. But that could be like one person. And the devs are like, this one guy is really, really upset. We're like, that's fine. These 800 other people are actually really happy with the game.
Yeah, and you can focus on negative energy. It's human nature to do
Oh, yeah,
that.
for
And it's
sure.
also human nature. Like if you like something, you're not you tend to not say things because you're enjoying things, you're happy. But if you're really pissed and you're mad at something, then by hell, you'll raise you'll raise some
absolutely.
voice. So it's good because you'll see sometimes developers go in and be like you said, just take a snapshot and be like, oh my god, everything's a hot mess, and you're like, actually,
You're like, no, it's not.
really not. Like,
Yeah.
we need to address this. We need to find out translate what they want and discuss that. But don't go focus in on it and then change everything.
And I think from experience, all of us have worked on games that have had that. Like, I can guarantee you that all of us have had that. Or
Yes.
programs, I should say. But
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, we'll get to individual horror stories later because those are definitely going to be fun. I love those. But I want to know how you guys got into this. Let's start with Josh. How'd you get into the industry? How'd you start doing community management?
Yeah, so it's really organic. I get asked that question a lot. There's no 101 handbook. My personal journey started when I was a kid. As I said before, just as everyone I'm a child of the 80s, playing handhelds, playing Nintendo games, getting involved in that. And then my friend brought me over and he's like, look at this Xbox. I want to show you this. And I was like, oh, shiny. Yep. And I still remember to this day, he booted up Halo CE, and I saw that opening sequence with that title screen and that music. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And I just sat there like, drool. And so from that point, I totally loved console, all about console games. And then basically gradually from there into IT, tech, nerd culture, hated my job, and started looking and started talking to people online. Fortunate enough, like I said, Lady Luck flicked me in the head and said, hey, you want a job at Xbox? So I started slinging tweets for at Xbox support. I got to do it all through launch, which is fascinating to see a console launch.
The launch of the Xbox One?
Yes. So I was there during all the launch of that whole fall was my first 6 months.
Wow.
There, so I got to see that whole thing from the inside. And it was fascinating just to watch. I felt like I was in a zoo, just looking through the glass, going, "This is so cool."
But really, they just threw you right into the deep end.
Yes,
That they were
absolutely,
just like,
absolutely.
Here you go. You're doing all this now.
Absolutely.
It's kind of community management, though, right? It's
yeah, you
like,
just jump
it's like,
into the
hey,
fire.
welcome, good
It
luck.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yep. From there, I moved over to the Ambassador program and the Xbox MVP program, which are influencer level programs that Xbox invests in. And then most recently, I'm on Quantum Break, so getting that out the door on the community side, making sure they're taken care of, making sure everyone on the PR marketing devs understand the conversation, community conversation, and it's going awesome. And just holding on. It's a roller coaster. It's the best way I say. That's you have no seatbelt, but you've got a good tight grip, and you're just holding on. But it's great.
Right, for dear life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Becky, how about you? How'd you get into community management?
So I can have an interesting transition. So I actually, I got my first computer when I was 2 years old, and what really was the cataclysm, I suppose, catalyst, is that my dad got me a custom white box, like 95 Windows
man.
95
Oh,
PC.
nice.
Yeah.
It's like, $5,000 thing that was just like gorgeous. And like with that, I started playing PC games on it, and that really that's all I did, because I was kind of sick growing up and like in and out of the hospital, so all I did was play PC games. When I went into school, though, I actually was focused on computer forensics and criminal justice, and really was like, I'm gonna work for the CIA and FBI and hack computers. Like,
Oh,
that's
my
what I wanted to
goodness.
do.
You're
And
going to be Mr. Robot.
yeah.
More ambition than everybody else in this room.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Hackers in the real
And
life.
so I did actually work at several police stations. I worked for Worcester Police Station and Rutland Police Station back in Massachusetts for a while. Yeah, and I did a lot of like cybercrime stuff along with criminal analysis. And however, after a couple of years doing that, while I was in school and stuff, I kind of realized like working for like the CIA and law enforcement is not that fun. It's really not that
No,
fun. And so when I was in school, we actually had, for one of my computer programming classes, we had someone from Turbine come in and talk about Lord of the Rings Online. And I was like, wait, you can work in games? I never thought, because in Massachusetts, like the only thing at the time that I even knew of was Turbine and, 38 studios. And so I was like, wait, this is a thing. So in order to graduate, I had to do a full-time internship. And so at that time, I decided to apply to every single studio in America.
Oh, wow.
Like literally
That
sent
is a
out,
lot of studios.
Yeah. I sent out like 2,000 emails. It was ridiculous. And unfortunately, it's illegal in a lot of places to have unpaid interns.
Oh,
And my school required a full-time unpaid internship, which was ridiculous. So anyways, finally had this one studio, 10 Cent Boston, reach out and be like, hey, well, we have a marketing position, like marketing assistant under the community manager, because we're going to be launching a new Facebook game. And this was during the height of Zynga and stuff. So, like,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I like talking to people. Okay. So I joined in, started taking more, like I had taken a whole bunch of communication classes and psychology classes and things like that. So started doing that and found out I freaking loved it. Like, loved it. I loved educating people and talking to them and learning about them and kind of being that liaison between studio and people. And so from there, yeah, I just joined on and then they hired me. And so from there, I've just been doing community management at several different studios. I worked on Ascend Hand of Cull and Toy Soldiers. Wow. Toy Soldiers.
It's hard to say.
I know. Well, after Ascend Hand of Cull, it's like.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
you're-
You got through that one flawlessly.
I know,
The
right?
soldiers just
It's
fell
it's like
apart.
you had to say it over and over again.
Yeah.
Right? How many times?
And then I've worked at places like 3D Realms for a little bit and Nikidu Games currently I kind of help out with and different things like that. I mostly do consulting though now between like I do marketing, community management, and web development.
So you're all over the place these days.
Yeah, pretty
All
much.
right.
Sounds like you, though.
Yeah,
That's weird.
I get bored really, really, really easily.
Then you
so-
found something good.
Yeah, no,
Great.
I like talking, so.
It's a good thing you're on this show.
Well, good.
Because I'm just taking a back seat here because you guys got all the good stories. So speaking of which, let's go on to Mike. How'd you get into it? What's your origin story, as it were?
So my origin story starts like everybody else. Like I had games as a kid. I played a lot of Atari. I played a lot of Nintendo, PlayStation, all that stuff growing up. I actually went to school for radio broadcasting because I wanted to be on the radio. And I applied to a school for radio broadcast, and they were like, "You don't have the personality to be on the radio," which was crazy. For those who know me now are like, "Wait, are you serious?" That actually happened. And I worked at Disneyland on the Jungle Cruise for about 5 years, which sort of gave me that,
Cultivated, probably.
yeah,
that.
well, I had that improv that I was doing. I was doing improv, and then I started doing Jungle Cruise, which sort of helped with all of that. And I got up here in Washington, when I was still down. I'm from LA originally. I was down in LA, and I was doing QA. For those who don't know, it's quality assurance, it's video game testing, which people think, oh, that just means you play video games all day. That's actually not the case. When you're doing quality testing, you're like, hey, here's one level. I need you to run along every single wall in this level and tell me if there's any holes. Which, like, that's what you do for 8 hours a day on certain games or certain aspects of the game. So I started doing that for a long time. I moved up to Washington, and I started working at WB Games. Or Monolith. We were working on Fear, Scooby-Doo, Speed Racer, a bunch of really crazy games. And a friend of mine, Teresa, she was like, "Hey, you have a really good outgoing personality. Let's make some content." So we started making content for our internal staff because we went to E3. We started taking videos and started producing our own content. And from there, she was like, "You are really good at kind of doing these things, and you're a good host, and you have a way with people. You should really start thinking about community management." I was like, it's something I've always sort of been interested in. I just didn't know how to get my foot in the door. So I took a shot and just threw my hat in the ring or my name in the hat for Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering. And my boss who was there interviewed me, and he was very honest. He was like, there are people that on paper have more experience than you. He's like, but you have the personality that I need for this job. He's like, everything else you will get to learn. And so I am very thankful, very lucky that my boss, Trevor, at the time, gave me that opportunity, and that's how I got into community management. And then I just started learning as I was going, following the right people, talking to community managers everywhere, figuring out what they do, seeing what works. And that's the stuff I learned, because you kind of need that. You need to be able to, sometimes community manager is the face of a game. You need to be able to put on a good face, be prepared to speak, because not all devs and not all producers, they're not really ready to speak. And so like that, I consider myself very lucky that's how I got there.
And I've heard that a lot, that when speaking with other community managers when they were applying for jobs, and even the same for me, it was like, you have the personality, you have the traits, I can teach you the craft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it seems like if there's a spark there, you can kind of be set up for that.
And it's being in a lot of Facebook groups for community managers and having so many community manager friends has, I think, helped me insane these
I
last
learned
batch
so
of years.
much.
Yeah. Like, I've learned so much. I went to a lot of panels at PAXs. But yeah, it's a thing.
One thing I've learned is how small it is. I always thought,
yeah.
Looking outside, I was like, oh, it's so big, it's so vast, it's worldwide, and it's an itty-bitty little family.
Yeah. Everyone knows
everybody
everyone.
talks. There's not like this
yeah.
competition or clash.
Nope.
It's like we all just
talk
want
to each other.
we just want the community to be a little better at the end of the day.
Yeah, and if somebody is like, hey, like my contract's ending, almost instantly 4 or 5 people are like, talk to me, I know someone. I know somebody else, I know somebody else. And so it's like, it's
great.
You don't burn your bridges.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. I want to touch on something Becky said, where you mentioned that there was a moment when you were like, oh, you can get paid to work on video games.
Yes.
This isn't just a thing that I consume; it's a thing people create. For Josh and Mike, what was your like? Hey, this could be more than a hobby. This could be a job moment. When did you realize gaming was more than something you just did as a kid?
For me personally, it's when I started following people. I started listening. So I had the facade. Oh, games. Oh, you have to be a developer, a programmer,
Right.
or this crazy business exec, or you have to have a PR degree. And that may have been true in old school times, but as we shifted through the generations, I realized this is more organic. This is people have voices. I'm noticing there's a spot here for types of personalities. So I basically did the whole like, well, what type of personality am I? Where do I fit? What kind of role would be good? And that's when I just started sifting jobs and looking through game jobs. I started actually I'd go to Epic, look through their game list. Go to EA, look through their game. I look at studios, the publishers, the
Yeah.
console hardware manufacturers, and I was just like, okay, I think community management might be the right fit here because I can help give them a voice. I'm a huge fan, first of all. I'm very, I have my opinions, but I can work in this craft of translating between all the hands and all the haves. So for me, it was just like watching and just taking a look at the jobs and listening to people. That was the big thing. Listening to podcasts, listening to panels, people talk.
Yeah, for me, I think it was so getting into QA. I was like, oh, okay, I can get paid to play video games 8 hours a day. And then I was like, all right, QA is something different. But I was unaware of how everything worked in video games. So I thought, okay, I go to QA. After QA, you become a QA lead. After QA lead, you're a producer, and that's it. Like, I thought that was the track. It wasn't until I moved up to Washington when my friend Teresa sat me down. It was like, let's create this content. Let's do this thing. Let's create our own internal community. And from there, that's when I started realizing, oh my goodness, this is what I want to be doing. I would much rather be doing this, talking to people, getting feedback, interviewing, other game developers, interviewing people about what kind of games they like, and creating this content than, seeing how many times I can refire a gun before it jams or something like that in a video game.
Yeah, it helps to not have assumptions. That's the big thing. Is I had tons of assumptions, and when I started in support, I started at the bottom and at Xbox support, just sending tweets. I just, again, watching and realized, wait a minute, this is way different. So I wiped the slate clean of all my assumptions.
Yeah. I mean, I had assumptions. I just didn't know who to ask. I didn't know who to talk to because everyone in my group were all QA. We were all QA, so
Yep.
we all had the same thing. We all knew, okay, we go from QA, one of us is going to be a lead, and one of us is going to go into a producer, and then we were all fighting for that role because in QA, we didn't talk to anybody else. We were told, test this level, and that's it.
And I think that's also kind of finding a mentor. I think really helped.
Oh,
me
yeah,
too.
for sure.
Like we ended up this guy Walter Somal, who used to be at Microsoft Nerd, then he joined Tencent Boston. Now he's at Harmonix, and he was a huge impact for me. Like I was just doing marketing assistant, so I was doing a little bit of community management, customer service, things like that, the basic down at the bottom. And he really pushed me. He was like, "You're really good at this, and you have the personality. Like." You should, and at that point, I actually almost went back to criminal justice and stuff, but he really pushed me. He's like, you're good at this and you like it. Continue. And and he really just educated me on how everything works. And I think that was, such a big influence on me.
I'm glad you brought up the mentors because that was a big thing. That's something I didn't realize until after I got into the ambassador MVP world when I started meeting people. And I ended up organically getting 3 mentors to kind of help me along this path, Yoda's, Obi-Wan's, if you could say. And that's the only reason I have ever gotten as far as I've gotten is because those people have taught me so much because they just have this giant wealth of knowledge and they want to share that, which is great. So that's the only reason I would say like I've even got anywhere near this far is just because the mentors just reaching out and helping.
It's always good to have help. Before we go on, I want to remind everybody watching us on Twitch that you can go ahead and send us your questions on the stream. We can see what you are typing.
Oh, yeah.
And anything you guys want to know from these guys, within reason, I guess, they can answer. And I guess I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to answer something that's without reason. That's, of course, up to you.
Answer rule. So here's the thing: is if you get a group, and I believe this is the same for improvisers as well as community managers. If you get a group of community managers in a room, somebody will know something about anything.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to ask about the assumptions you had that you said that were wrong. What are the things for anybody else who's thinking of getting into gaming or into community management? What are the things that they're thinking that now they're they're probably wrong about, that you were wrong about when you were there?
Becky's like, I'm ready.
Becky's got a ton of them, it looks like.
No, this is like kind of a new thing I've found, like a new trend, is everybody thinks that you have to get a degree in game design now. or
yeah.
game
Yes.
development.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely
is
true.
so wrong. Like, I know community managers or other developers, everything, who have degrees in English, have degrees in history, have degrees in computer science, in, basket weaving even. Like, the thing about the game industry is that it's so diverse, and you need that diverse education to make like really good games.
Yeah.
You need all those different skills. So you don't have to get a specialized degree in game design or game development in order to work in games.
My school was the streets.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
comes
Well, I
down to
went to school.
experience and putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
For me is what I've noticed. Same thing. Like, I think my last boss had like a degree in like history or like English writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the directors of community over at Rare Studios, as I think his degree is in like professional writing and history and English.
Yeah.
So like nothing to do with like 1800 century history or something like that. So, and I've learned people have degrees. There's a dev I met who has like a biochemistry degree.
Oh, wait.
It's just basically the point is just it doesn't really matter from there. It's just your experience, who you are, and putting yourself out there. Because there's a lot of you need a bachelor's, you need a master's in programming. And
I'm gonna ask a leading question here. How many times have you been asked what your degree was in for any reason other than curiosity, like trying to get into the
Zero.
industry?
0. Yeah, none
from a
whatsoever.
professional standpoint, 0.
Goose eggs around the table,
Yep.
kids.
Yeah. There's a really good question in the chat. Tawny Cat says, how tough is it when a game creates backlash in the community? What do you do as a community manager?
So for me, it's really about like making sure the community knows that you are listening. Like, we hear that this stuff is broken.
We
and
hear
we need to
everything.
yeah, we know that it's there.
We know, yeah.
We're working on it. And sometimes it's tough because it takes time for developers to fix bugs sometimes. They
Yes.
do have to go home and sleep. They do have to eat. It is a thing. They can't fix things instantly. So it is really tough to sometimes make sure that people understand that their worries are heard and that we are working on it, and really just make that clear.
We can only say blank is coming soon so many times before you guys get tired of hearing it. And I think Wizards is getting better at this. Microsoft is completely getting better at this. And my current company, Lone Shark, is brilliant at this. If something is wrong, we are transparent as crap about it. We
Yeah.
were like, this is why this game is delayed. This is what's happening, especially in Lone Shark right now. We have straight up said, this is why one of our games is going to be later than we expected to. And I think companies are starting to come around to that a lot more than it has been in the past even 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Huge difference now.
more, like compared to 2 years ago, companies are now starting to say, we understand, we hear you. And I think the hardest part is you guys have to trust us. As community managers, you have to understand that we hear you, we are providing feedback to the devs, and we are trying to give you as much as we are allowed to say.
Yeah. Acknowledgement is number one.
Yeah.
Right out of the door. Just anybody, if you buy something, you do something, you see something, and you're pissed, if somebody acknowledges you, it goes like a billion miles farther.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there, being transparent, as like you said, has been a big trend I've seen in the community, in the industry itself,
Yeah.
shifting over the past couple years.
There's another question here by the hashtagonist. And I'm gonna. I know.
I love that guy.
I love that name. That
Guy's so good.
He's
great.
amazing.
some
he
great
asks,
Photoshop
where do you
skills.
draw the line between doing things for exposure and starting to charge for your services? These days, in the gaming community, asking for money from your gamers is such a hot button issue.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Where do you guys stand on that?
So for me, when I was still in school and learning and trying to get my bearings, I did do stuff for free. Because
Yeah.
that helped. It also it's almost like doing an internship at that point. And that I find okay. As long as you're helping and you're surviving still, that's okay. But when it comes to actually working on a product where your services are genuinely making money and you deserve some of that money because you spent time away from actually working to get paid, you should be getting paid.
Yeah, agreed.
If somebody asks you for your time, it means that they find it valuable.
Exactly.
Right? Which
Yeah,
means you can
and
ask for the value of
Don't
it.
undercut yourself.
And your time is valuable. That's a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Don't think, oh, well, if I do it this once, it'll be okay. Recognizing that.
Yeah.
Because that can spiral out of control.
Oh, yeah.
And I think someone like the hashtagonist actually makes a really good point with his question, because if you guys have seen his stuff on Twitter, he does some great Photoshop experience.
Oh my God, he's the fastest Photoshopper I have ever seen in my life.
And I can see where he's like, some of these things he's doing for fun, and then some people are like, well, we want to use this image, can we pay you? Or we want to use this image, we're going to put your name on it. You'll get exposure from this. And we're like, well, like,
Or
I would rather
just
pay.
using the image
Yeah.
and then finding it later. There's
Yeah.
different variations.
Yeah, like I have people that are like, hey, I want to make a Twitch overlay for your stream. I'm like, that's great. I would like to pay you for that because I'm going to use it. It's going to be seen by lots of people.
Yeah.
Yes, I
So
want credit. It's a big thing I always try to push. If someone, so I get a lot of fan art, I get a lot of
Yeah.
user-generated content. I always want them to have that recognition. So
Yep, for sure. There was a question in there that I think all of us can agree on and have the same answer to. Somebody had asked, is community manager more of a 9-to-5 job or an around the clock
That's funny.
or an around the clock job?
When does the internet close for business,
Yeah.
guys?
Right,
Never.
exactly. How many times have you been in bed being like, hang on, something's wrong?
Can I tell a horror story real quick?
Yeah,
Okay.
Please do.
I want to hear
So
a horror
community
story.
managers do have to sleep at some point. I had one time, this guy had a bug, and it was like 8 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, or night, I should say. And I asked him, like, I sent him a response to the thing, and I was like, you know, ping me, like, next time you're online, and I'll see if I'm online too. I'll see if I can recreate this issue with you. Anyway, so I waited like 2 hours before going to bed at like 10 or 11 or whatever. And I go to bed, I wake up the next morning, and I have like emails and spams being like, I came online for you and you weren't there.
Oh,
and
wow.
like he was like, and I saw on your Steam that you were playing Dark Souls. And I'm like, I was not playing Dark Souls. My husband was using my account playing Dark Souls. And this guy just went like absolutely just ranted on. And so anyways, it ended up to this where this guy started emailing us saying that he was in law enforcement and was going to sue us
Oh, come on.
because
Come on,
I
come
didn't
on.
work over the weekend.
Come on.
I'm dead serious. I am
Yeah.
dead serious. And I was like, are you what? Like, I'm sorry? Like, I mean, there's really not much you can do at that point than just be like, I'm sorry, we work from these hours. We are open from these hours. And I said I would address your issue. I hear your issue,
Yeah.
and we are looking into it, and I will address it. Like, so.
We live and breathe community, but at the same time, like, we have children's, girlfriends, boyfriends, friends, dogs, pets, like things
I like
that
to
need
hug my cat.
things that need yeah, you need to feed your cat. Like, you have to do things that pay attention, because I've had even in people in the industry who are not in community, to clarify, tweet me or like say something like, when do you sleep? And
yeah.
my reply every time is, well, the community doesn't sleep, so I don't sleep.
There's
But
a
I mean,
reason I drink these.
Yeah, and I fuel myself on lattes. I just finished one before I got here.
And that's the great pitfall, I think, of the internet, or at least one of them. For all the things that's great about it, it's really easy to forget the human element on the other side of the conversation. And you three probably know better than most people that you're the first line of defense for these organizations from that throng of internet.
So there's a great quote that I can't remember where it's from right now. I'm sure someone in the chat will remember. The best thing about the internet is that it gave everyone a voice, and the worst thing about the internet is that it gave everyone a voice.
Yes. It's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to go to a question that has now left our stream, but it was a great one. What do you do when you're in a position where the audience is asking for something and you agree with them as a fan? You're like, this would be sweet, and the developers just will not hear it, or they really want to go in a different direction. How do you balance
Happens
that?
all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically for me, it's just really nailing that speak developer.
Yeah.
It's basically like, what's important to you as a developer? Okay, you know how that it's that important, and using that transition basically to say this is why it's so important to them as well. Making sure, because they have to understand that voice. I mean, you can have your battles and you can have your bumps, but you also have to have that professional, like, you're not, because there's another misconception, you're not just tweeting all day.
No.
Right.
Like, that's not community management. So you also have to make sure that your developer understands the professional, like, because I kind of heard, and I'm going to botch this example a little bit, but a developer, they code, they program, an EP runs that from a high level. A PR person probably went to school or was trained some way in PR. Same thing with marketing, or they've gotten experience. And I can't write marketing schedules and make big deals on TV shows and movies. I can't do I can't tomorrow, like right now, pump out PR releases. I can't go code level in quantum or fix a time power that somebody wants. but I can manage the shit out of the community. However, the developer, the PR, the marketing person, they can all send tweets. So if you kind of understand, I'm botching it, but if you kind of understand that translation, like there's that assumption, like, oh well, I can send tweets, I can post in the forums, I can say I speak for the community. So from the internal business side, you have to make sure that they understand that professionalism. That I know you can send tweets, but that's not what I do, because you can have that misconception. I can't go dev a level. So you need to understand you can't just go run a community.
The difference between I have an idea for a story and I'm a writer.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the biggest things in dealing with that is just being completely honest with the devs. You're like, hey, I know my audience. They will not enjoy this. They will not like this. We need to find a way to spin whatever we are doing into a positive light. And from there, it comes a conversation. It's you talk to the devs hear you. Then you need to talk to marketing and PR to be like, we need to all sit down and figure out how, once we pissed off the community, how we can get them back to our side.
Yeah.
Because that's happened. I've been on games where that's happened before.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, the community will react poorly to this. Here are my assumptions. Here are my ideas of how to fix it. Please help me. Please market this up. Please PR this up for me. This is what we need to spin it. This is how I think we should spin it.
Because it's your job to make sure they understand how important that is.
Yeah.
You're doing your job when they invest and they know.
Yep.
Yeah.
On the flip side, when you're working for a developer and they want to go in a new direction with a game, and you're worried that the audience isn't going to receive it well, maybe you think that they could like it or you think that they won't like it, but it's your job still to sell what the developers have told you. How do you approach that? How do you begin to when you've got something you know the community is going to resist on?
I have my own personal
how do you
flavor on
approach
this. This is my approach to it. I first start with community leaders. So whatever program I'm on, because I can't be 24/7. I can't be online when Europe's firing up on a community thing. I can't be online. Switzerland. People. Finnish fans.
Right.
Talking about that, like I'm probably sleeping. So what I do is first is I usually in all my programs up to date. I've found like some really trusted individuals, community leaders, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
Who are so good, like I would even hire them. Like that's how good I try to aim for. And I use them as my first line of defense, because if I'm one person, but then if I have, let's say, 11 community leaders, then I can work with them and have transparent conversation. Maybe you work up an NDA with them or something like that. And this is kind of how I approach it. And then when we have like a sticky subject that's going to be a developer decision that's going to totally shift left what's going on in the community, I translate that to them, and then they translate out to the community. And then the biggest thing is we install a listening system that goes back and forth and back and forth.
And so that's part of the difference between like a community manager and say a social media expert, that you're not you have these things in place ready to go. You're developing these systems.
Correct. So that way I didn't just create that because of that decision that may make the community shift left. That was already in place. The mechanism is the community knows the mechanism. They trust the mechanism. So there's at least a layer of bond and trust that we already are starting on. We're not just shooting in the black and seeing what happens.
I have an actual, it's not actual. It makes it sound like you didn't have one. But for Magic, when I worked on Magic the Gathering, we were shifting from one of its old Magic Online programs to a brand new UI. And we were like, we do not know how the community is going to react to this. So we brought in some of the biggest names in Magic, and we're like, we want you guys to sit down for 3 days, play this a whole bunch, ask us your questions, and you're free to go. Say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't tell them what they could and couldn't say. And they went back and they were like, this is the new Magic. It's really good. I really enjoy it. This was going to happen. And it already started to get the community on our side before we got to reveal anything. And I think that's, like Josh said, that's a way that you can really help, especially reaching out to those community leaders.
Cobalt mentioned mods. Like that's just a
yeah.
perfect example.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Yeah.
I love the shit out of mods. That layer of defense you have, because it goes two ways. They help filter, hey, this exploded overnight, so I'm first on the job of like, now I know where my priorities are. Groups like mods are the best people in the world for communities.
Becky, how about you? How do you deal with the either side disagreeing with each other?
I mean, they kind of answered everything. I usually end up trying to do like a slow kind of explanation, really be transparent, and just make sure everybody understands, like, once you get used to this, this might actually be a really good change. Like, you might end up liking this. And, because, I mean, a lot of times, like, people hate change. Like, every time Facebook, like,
Oh, my
oh my
goodness.
God, every
Human
time,
nature.
every time
Absolutely.
Facebook changes something, it is the end of the world.
And then a month later, you've forgotten what
Exactly.
Facebook used to be like.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Every
And,
time.
like, people are using the reaction buttons on Facebook now, despite like hating the idea of it and things like
Exactly.
that. And so, like, I think it's great to like clarify with people and really just get the community talking, and the mods and getting community leaders involved, whether they like it or not. It's still good to have their opinion on it, because I found a lot of communities are starting to trust like those community leaders more than like the development team. A lot of times when it comes to words.
I was gonna say the community also will naturally gravitate towards community leadership.
Yep.
Because there's a trust and bond, because your brothers and sisters in not in combat, but you're
gaming.
in gaming.
Yeah.
Versus I will say I sit inside that bubble. I sit
Yeah.
outside that bubble because I'm paid. I work for a company, and people will trust me. But I'm still just on the skirt of that. However, community leadership, it's just a automatic, unbiased trust for people like mods.
I think the difference part is also like there's an inherent distrust when somebody's trying to sell you something, because they're trying to make money, and all these community leaders, all the mods, there's tons of love for the mods of the Twitch.
I know,
stream.
I
and
love
that's
it.
great, because the great part about what we forget about mods is they don't get paid.
Nope.
They just like
They're
protect the
volunteers.
internet from morons, and that's great.
And
I want to touch on that because NP Spears asked us about this, and then Black Isley Can was like, "This is a really good question," and I was gonna get to it. I just love these stories. How do you deal with trolls? Quite simply, right? Like, at this, I'm going to open it up to some horror stories because this is where they will come from.
Yeah.
But trolling is, of course, it's an activity on the internet now. All right, it's 21st century cow tipping.
There's people who just dedicate.
They
to
make
just
money. Some
Exactly,
people have careers
exactly.
in trolling.
Yeah.
So you sort of being again the first line of defense against the internet as well, especially the trolls. How do you deal with them? Do you just ignore them? Do you have to quiet them somehow? What do you do?
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like killing them with kindness. I think really, really helps. Like, just like, I don't know how to explain that.
It's hard, right? It's hard to explain because I've done it.
Yeah.
I've converted.
them to
I've
quiet
converted.
really quickly.
I've converted some trolls. Other trolls, you just manage to shut up. You have to be able to make fun of yourself, and sometimes it's sort of it's hard to explain. If you were making fun of yourself, then they have nothing left to make fun of you for, and they're like, well, this isn't fun anymore.
I mean, yeah, because trolls
For some
are
of them.
essentially just bullies in a
Yeah.
sense. And so, like, if you don't let them get away with it, like, in the
Yeah.
sense, like, don't let it affect your community by, making fun of yourself and stuff like that, it really helps quiet them down. Another thing is, like, I'm pretty harsh on the ban hammer and stuff. And, like, the second you're attacking another community member,
Oh yeah.
like, I usually have a 3-strike system. And, I know I'm nice. I am nice.
No, yeah, I was gonna say it's like when I was on Magic, anything. It's like if there was one strike that was something that I didn't agree with.
Oh, yeah,
or
there's
as far as,
sometimes
I was
that's
just
just
like, nope,
nope.
you get
Yeah.
no chances.
There's sometimes that's no. There's other people who they just I don't know how to explain it. Just, there are some people who deserve a second chance of you think that they might actually quiet down in the sense
Yeah.
of making fun of people. Or just being disruptive, but yeah, there's some people who are they're just obviously there. They don't even care about the game. They're just obviously there.
Yeah, there's harmful trolls and there's comedic trolls. At least I'm the least experienced at the table, but those are kind of the two categories I run into. With comedic trolls, it's usually I hit them with empathy, or I hit them with like okay, I understand, or you kind of quiet them down. With harmful trolls, man, my tolerance is a little bit lower. I'll invest the time to if I have it, I'll actually see okay, what kind of person is this?
Yeah.
Is this someone I can just hit up and talk to and say, hey man, or hey gal, let's chat.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody who's just hell bent on destroying the conversation, destroying the community, they're like gremlins too. You have to be careful. They're like spread
feed them after
you
midnight.
spread love.
Yeah.
Yeah, you spread, and they spread like fire. So silence is the best treatment because it starves the shit out of them. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
How about the difference between a troll and a hater? Somebody who's not necessarily just trying to get a reaction, but is determined to dislike everything this product
Haters
releases.
gonna hate.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
there's always
Haters gonna hate.
There's always those people who just hate everything, and there's also you really have to be able to tell the difference between someone just being like, I hate this, but you need to actually dig down what they're hating against.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who just are not pleased by anything.
Because I've seen haters convert.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as we talked about in the beginning of the stream. If you can understand where they're coming from, acknowledge that, and maybe address their concerns, you might hear all this shouting, this swearing at the top level, but when it comes down to it, maybe they just want to be acknowledged. Maybe it's something simple that could have been handled.
They just want a hug.
But then on the left side of that, yeah, some people you won't change their mind. So I give it a college try, but I mean, it'll come down to where some people you just have to, let their ship sail out this way, and you just keep moving on because the community is a mass and it's an individual, so you have to just remember that.
Yeah.
The community is also changing. The internet, a lot of your job, of course, is on the internet. And while things like Twitch, Twitter have been at this point around for several years, they still are changing the way they interact with our culture. How in your job do you handle the way the internet is constantly changing how it handles things?
It's so. One thing to note is like, there's not just Twitter, and so I have like you manage your own company forums plus Steam discussions plus Twitter plus Facebook plus God knows what, Google Plus, like things like that.
LO Peach.
Yeah, like LO Peach, all that, like
where nobody's
the
on.
Overnighters,
yeah, the overnighters. I mean, everything. There's literally like thousands of different places that your community could be. Reddit, even Imgur, like things like that. And like I found like with one of my products, randomly Reddit was super popular, and I was like, none of my communities have ever been on Reddit. Okay, I will take this and I will handle this.
It's very, very interesting. Going from, which is weird because Magic is both an online and analog game. D&D is an analog and now somewhat digital game. Going from there, everybody was very active online. You work at Microsoft, Xbox, everybody's very active online. Lone Shark Games, our audience isn't active online. They don't engage as much online, and they don't have an online presence because they're board gamers. They spend most of their time board gaming. But when we go to events, we completely fill every room we're in. All of our playtests get extremely filled up faster than we can set them up. And so it's something that, you got to figure out where your community. Lone Shark Games community is a very in-person community versus the other games I've worked on that is, a very online community. So it's something that's very different. It's like Becky said, you got to find where your community lies to be able to talk to them.
Yeah, setting up listening systems in the beginning is what I do. So like those community leaders, just setting yourself up so that way you're just constantly listening, because half your job is talking, and I truly believe half, or if not more, is just listening. Yeah. So if you can just listen and make sure you're keeping an eye on those spaces, that's at least what I do.
As you move from different projects, like you said, from analog to digital and back, as well as different types of games, the different projects, like I said, your fan bases are going to move. How do you approach it differently? Is there a different sort of charisma you need to bring to different genres? Like how do you do it, and what have you had to change? Yeah. What have you had to change about what you usually do as you go from project to project?
I mean, Twitter's only 140 characters.
Yeah, exactly.
So what you're going to say there is going to be different than what you're going to write in Facebook.
And sorry, Becky, I cut you off. No, I was just pretty much going to say something very similar. Is like depending on the type of game and stuff, like your attitude has to change. Like you have to be able to mold, and that's the thing about community management is you have to be able to mold into like different parts. Like I think a really good example is Rebecca from Digital Extremes on Warframe. She has essentially become the mother Tenno, which Tenno is like the characters. No, she literally is. They call her mother. Yeah. And they like and on top of it, she did also voice act the main like mothery thing. And so she managed to literally mold into like the main subject of this game and really helps lead the community and stuff. And they are such fans. Like they're like super obsessed with what she says and what she does, and really go to her. And I think like that's just a key point, is you really have to mold into whatever type of thing. Like you have to mold into more analog things or more digital or Xbox. I find like FPS players are very different than strategy players, things like that.
For me, it's like if I were to be offered a job in, let's say, Finland and move there, I would have to learn to speak Finnish, right?
Right, and their slang, right?
Yeah, I would have to learn their slang, like what culturally, like, is there a type of food that I shouldn't be eating or should be eating?
What's their gaming trash talk?
Right. What are the things to do? So when I approach it, like for example, I moved to Quantum in January, I approach it the same way. Remedy has a really deep love and passion community about whatever game they put out. So I was like, all right, so I basically went in underwater and submerged myself in the Remedy community everywhere I could, so that way I could start to learn that language and speak it. And then from there evolve like what's important to them, to where I get to the point where I can speak Remedy. Yeah. So that's kind of how I approach it. So if there's whatever game on the future or whatever community in the future, I submerge myself. And as a community manager, you have to be malleable anyways. Yeah. You can't be just a board in how your character is. So that's kind of how I approach it.
I think that's with every game. Like every game I worked on, like I would take a week or two and just be like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to sit here and like read, as much as I can, read as many forum posts, see what the conversation like is Twitter, set up your searches in TweetDeck or Hootsuite or whatever it is to find what the conversations are happening, to be like, all right, this is what people are talking about. This is how they are. But it's.
Yeah, before I accepted my job, I said I want to play whatever build is right now. I want to play it before I accept this.
There you go.
When the offer was made, and so I went home that weekend. I played whatever build was available, and then I came in Monday, and I was like, okay, I accept, because I wanted to truly also believe in it to a point and understand it.
On that note, when something happens that you know you're going to have to deal with, right? Like I said, you've been lying in bed, and you're like, oh, I got to take care of this. How long do you wait? Of course, it's going to depend on the scenario, but like how long do you wait between getting a reaction and responding to said reaction, right? Do you want to get out in front of it, or do you want to see what the community's saying first?
It depends on what the reaction is and what it's towards. So there's some things that I let kind of fester and then analyze, how should I handle this?
Like what?
Like, for example, like sometimes if a patch release, like you release a patch, and if it's very mixed reviews at first, I kind of hang out and wait and see, like, okay, do I need to, like, jump in and stop the haters and explain stuff? Like, it's more of, do I need to explain what's going on? Like, is there a truth that I need to be like, okay, this is physically impossible for us to program in the game? Or, things like that. I'll jump in front of those mighty quickly. If it's just, like, hate and I understand, like, or if I already know, like, another patch is coming out or something, I might, wiggle a little bit.
It's trial by fire also. I mean, I've made mistakes as a community manager and learned like, oh, okay.
We all have.
But I've been on the same point, I've been acknowledgeable. Like, hey, you know what? The messaging was wrong. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
I'm human too, just like you guys are human. But in the same sense, just like what you said.
One of my favorite things is when something's coming in the future that the community is asking for. Because then when it happens and you release it in the game, you're like, that's right. We heard you guys. We're putting this in. When truthfully, it was going to go in the whole time.
Yeah.
We're going to do it the whole time.
I'm in there dropping mic. I got a school bag. I'm just throwing mics left and right.
We're like, this was because of you guys.
Yep.
Man, we knew.
Yep.
Sorry, guys.
But it depends.
Truths.
It depends on the situation totally.
Yeah, no, for
and
sure.
And you learn that. That's a muscle you've got to
yeah.
flex and get used to.
I can't tell you how many times at both Wizards and Microsoft where it's like, okay, this is happening. Is this something we need to preempt? Or are we just going to go ahead and then react afterwards?
Yeah.
And no matter how much you plan, sometimes
sometimes
you can underplan. Oh, this will be little. This will be a small beat. No big
that's
deal.
the hugest
And then
thing
kaboom.
ever.
And then the other times you're like, you get all your mics ready.
Oh, yeah.
And then nothing happens. And you're like,
That's cool,
oh,
guys.
Bink.
I'm like, aw.
Yeah.
That worked.
Community manager seems like the hardest job in gaming.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
You think it's up there?
It can be.
Yeah.
It has
It's
its
definitely
own-
up there.
Has its own challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people, if they really don't like your game, will say the nastiest things to you.
Oh, God, it can be horrible.
Oh, yeah. And it's some things where you're like, they don't actually mean this. They're upset. You may have that tear because somebody said something so hurtful towards you, but you're like, they don't mean it.
Human nature will be to personally attack you as a
Yeah.
person.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were such a small, and also remember, you were such a small part of that game.
Yeah.
A important part. It's like a Jenga thing. You have to keep all the pieces in place, or else it'll all fall down. But I've noticed that a lot. That if you don't make sure that's all right there, it'll fall apart.
Yeah.
We have a question from the stream, and as a comic book fan, this resonates with me. And working with things like Magic, this is probably going to play into your experience more. How do you handle fans of lore versus fans of the game? If it's an adaptation of something that's been around for a long time, like Dungeons and Dragons, how do you sort of balance that? There could be two fandoms that are equally valid.
I think it depends on what. So it's difficult because most of the time everyone's gonna love everything. I've yet to see, especially in Magic or D&D, I've yet to see someone be like, this character doesn't fit right for this setting. It's D&D. Like any character can fit in any setting. Same with Magic, and I think it's the same way. I luckily haven't worked on a ton of licensed products. I did work on a Speed Racer game and a Scooby-Doo game. But it was like, this is a reboot of Scooby-Doo. This is them younger. This fits. This plays like Scooby-Doo. The dialogue is cheesy like Scooby-Doo versus the lore. I don't think I've actually had really any sort of experiences where I've had to be like, we need to make these people happy, but not these people, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think a problem when it becomes a problem is when, say you have a game and you have a lot of people interested in the lore, and there's a gap that you can't fill,
Yeah.
and they're angry about it. But then there's tons of people who just like the hack and slash part of the game,
Yeah.
and are just there to kill stuff. And so it's, as a community manager, you have to mold to like figure out what both sides are missing or what both sides like, and really kind of foster both of them. Kind of going back to, like, say, for example, Warhammer. There's a ton of people who are super, super, super dedicated to the whole lore and then the figure painting and stuff.
Yeah.
And no, I do not play Warhammer at all, but from experience, and different things like that. But then there's also a crowd who is really angry right now because like the new, groups or fractions or whatever are like super overpowered.
Yeah.
And, that's when, like, as community managers, and I don't even know if they have community managers, but if they do, like, you have to really analyze both sides and kind of foster both.
It ends up being a scale and a balance.
Yeah.
And it's not going to always be this. In fact, it's going to be this, 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 this. You just have to, like, okay, identify those. And then the same thing, like we said before, working with your internal parts as well to make sure they understand those importances. I've seen a lot of things, well, maybe it didn't make the game, but they're, the designers post-launch will do, like, this side quest, and lore-written books have been a great example that you've seen now come up recently in the last 5 years, I feel like, where books have kind of filled the gap.
Yeah.
Because
like Deus Ex even has, like, comics now.
Yeah. We even have a book. Like
Witcher.
Things have books to fill in these gaps and, like, really cater to those lore-based folks. That doesn't take 4 years to make a game or something like that.
Part is that the developers themselves are addressing that problem and are
Yeah.
recognizing that sort of dichotomy of the fan base.
Correct.
So not a game that any of us have worked on, but I know a game and this wasn't something like this wasn't an article I read. This was one friend of mine opinion on a game that I played and I loved, was Shadows of Mordor. That game was amazing. That game was super good.
It was really good.
Friend of mine, huge, massive Tolkien fan, was like, I enjoyed some of the aspects of this game. I did not enjoy that Tolkien's world was slapped onto this.
Yeah,
because I
I've
didn't
heard
feel that some of the killing belonged in the game. And I was like, I felt completely right at home for this, but I am not a Tolkien fan. And I think that's one of the things you're talking about. And so
You have to find that balance.
you got to find that balance, because I loved the crap out of that game. That game was amazing.
Yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah.
Real good.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I played like 60 hours one weekend. Like,
Yeah.
That was one of those you blink and you're like, wait, it's dark outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Time traveling.
That game was real good.
We only have a couple more minutes left. We're running out of time. I want to ask you guys just about some personal anecdotes, though. We did get a question on the stream, and then we'll start off with the good one. What was your favorite positive outcome of something where you did something and you were trying to get the community hyped and the developers were trying to get it hyped and it all worked out and you just were able to sit back and be like, man, we done good today. Do you have any good stories like that, or is it all just fighting the bull?
There's a lot. Like, that's the thing, is there's a lot.
A lot.
That's great then.
Yeah.
Where was it? When I was working at Magic, they announced a set was coming back. Or they announced we were going to go back to this new world. We're going to go back to a world that was previously really well received. And we knew everyone's going to be excited, and we had cameras set up for it. And I remember two dudes stood up. They had no idea. They didn't know each other at all. They were so excited. They hugged each other and then, like, high-fived. And afterwards, we're like, "Hey, we're gonna put this on YouTube. We need you to send us NDA." It's like, "Oh, also, like, are you guys friends?" And they're like, "We have no idea. We know each other. We don't know each other at all." But they were so excited that this world was coming back. They were so happy, and they hugged each other, and it was like, "That is amazing. Like, that is a good reaction."
For me specifically, is bringing community together. I've seen specifically like a charity-based business, bring them in, make some business connections, basically. But what evolved out of it was this whole charitable, like, organization beat that they were able to do. So watching real world, that sometimes you're just connecting to people. You're not making the change.
Yeah.
You're not the one who's, like, facilitating this amazing thing, but you just connected the dots. Yeah, very much a glue, so to speak. And I've seen that. I've done that in a couple ways, and watching that, it just, like, warms my little heart, and I just like, oh.
I think, like, kind of going similar situation is, like, we had this fan of Ascend Handical that happened to be local. And, like, he had been making tons and tons of videos. And, he on Twitter, like, was like, "Oh, I just found out the studio who made this game was local." And so I invited him to the studio. I was like, "Oh, you're, like, a half hour away. Like, you're underage, so bring your dad." But because he was, like, in high school or something. And so him and his dad came in and toured the studio and stuff and talked to him. He ended up talking to an artist because he also, like, drew and did art and stuff. And, like, now that kid is going to school for art because he wants to go
that's
into
awesome.
being a
That's
game
rad.
artist and being an environment artist. And like, so it's like little things like that, like being able to help the community and making the community excited about things. And he actually that day went home and posted like a video being like just super excited, like, oh
So
my
cool.
God, I went to the studio, like this is amazing.
Excuse me.
They're doing like amazing work, and it was like so cute.
And I want to point out that it's very common, I've noticed with community managers with my own job, that the good stuff that you do, like even 90% of the time, no one will hear about.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Or,
yeah,
or the people that hear about it are so small. So you have to be selfless to a certain point.
Oh, for sure.
Because 10% of the stuff you do will get that big, that spotlight, that this was amazing, thank you for making this happening. But 90% of the time, like the good things you did, the great things you did, were because it didn't happen, or
Yeah.
you stopped this from happening, or you took that knife in the back before anyone even saw it or knew there was a knife in the room.
You're doing your job best when people don't know you're doing your job.
That can happen a lot. Yep.
Then we only have a few more minutes left. We have 3 minutes, so I want to ask you two about. We heard a horror story from Becky. Do you have a go-to horror story where you, after just a few hours, you were like, "This guy, man, this was my job today"? Do you have any of those real great ones to write us out on?
Not great ones. All my horror stories are pretty just people just calling me bad names or saying terrible things about me on forums. That's really it though. Like
I've been through a couple. To share,
The thing is, some of the things you literally can't share.
yeah, the shareable ones, that makes it a little harder. I mean, it's just I've had people do personal attacks
Yeah.
because they were upset about things.
yeah.
I'll kind of share some of it. I had a guy try to cancel my wedding venue
What?
Jesus.
Yeah, never
because he was so upset. So he actually figured out where the wedding venue is, and he called it. And then I got a call back. So it's like, okay, where do we put your deposit back? Because they had tried to cancel the
What?
day and return my deposit. So.
Oh my
It's like a
God.
terrible
got
John
lucky.
Hughes movie. It's just a nightmare.
So I mean, I laughed.
You're so
I chuckled
likable.
about it. I laughed about it at the end of the day. I was like, oh, okay, this is funny.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, I never had anything that bad.
Lucky.
I mean, people wish I would die. But,
Yeah, oh yeah,
but
I get
that's
those
right.
rape
Exactly. It's like,
threats,
come on,
murder threats,
come on.
like
That's-
everything all
yeah.
the time. It's just part of the.
Yeah, I've
job.
never been attacked personally.
Yep.
I can say.
Professional meat shield.
Unfortunately, my wife has though, which is a sad thing. A lot of people try to get my wife fired a
Yep.
whole bunch of times.
Yep.
But that happens.
One last thing before we get out of here. We have about a minute left. Is there anything you guys would like to say to anybody who wants to just get into gaming in general, specifically community management?
Start off like
Your biggest
find-
nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, like find a game that you really, really like, and usually there's a community, and be active in that, and then
Oh, yeah.
like volunteer to be a mod,
Yep.
and like that really gets you experience that you can actually put on your resume. Like if you're like fresh out of college or high school, whatever, and you want to put that on your resume, like I like seeing community managers who say like I was an active mod in these communities.
Yep. Find your voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get active.
Yep.
And be yourself. Don't pretend to be something because you want to be it. Be yourself. People will naturally gravitate towards who you are as a
Oh, yeah.
person and your personality because they will see right through the bullshit, and I guarantee that. So if you're yourself 24/7 and you're honest and you just have a voice, people will see that, they'll recognize that, and they'll want to elevate that because it's genuine.
Say hi. Say hi to people.
Oh, yeah.
Come talk to us.
Tweet to us.
Tweet to us, talk to
Facebook,
us,
all
yeah.
of it.
On that note, you can find these three: Mike Robles at the Mike Robles, Josh Stein is at Steinekin, and Becky Taylor here is at OMG Laser Kittens. I've been Scott Shuken. I'm on Twitter at BJGN Spicoli. This has been Easter Eggs. We'll be back next week right here on Hyper RPG. Thanks for tuning in, guys.